2024 coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Switch gears, and I do want to talk a little bit about a guy we have talked about a lot here on the Aaron Torres Pod the last couple days. That is our old buddy, Rick Pitino. That is right. I started talking about this in early January, why St. John should pursue him. Then I talked about could it happen. Then I explained why I didn't think it would happen. Then I explained why I thought it might be happening over the last couple weeks. Well, on Monday, it becomes official. Rick Pitino is hired as the head coach at St. John's. We discussed all of it. Big Rick energy coming to New York, baby. That is right. Big Rick energy coming to New York. By the way, you want that Big Rick energy t-shirt? The link is in the show description, baby. That's right. Go to that YouTube show description. It is right there. But why I bring it up, Rick Pitino is now the head coach at St. John's. And it was interesting because on Tuesday, he did have his introductory press conference. And I thought he kind of hinted at what kind of program this is going to be, how good they can be. And oh, by the way, we already have a juicy recruiting rumor coming out of St. John. So let's get into all of it. But Tuesday was the introductory press conference. And I will just tell you, you can feel the energy back in this program. Like, first of all, I watched the press conference. Like the fact that somebody like me, and I know I cover college basketball, but would tune in to a St. John's introductory press conference, I guarantee you, St. John's had 3-4 coaches since I started in this business. This was the first time I ever watched an introductory press conference. The Big East commissioner, Val Ackerman, was there. Louis Carnesecca was there. I mean, you could just, national media, local media, you could just feel the energy in Madison Square Garden. The fact that they did the thing at Madison Square Garden tells you how big this was. So we had the introductory press conference, and I actually thought Rick Pitino in the introductory press conference said two very interesting things. The first thing he said, they asked him how quick he thought he would be able to win. And he said, oh, we're going to win quick. But this was the interesting thing from my perspective. He literally said something to the effect of, and I don't think it's going to be hard. You talk about some Big Rick energy there. I've never heard a coach just say, I don't think winning at the power conference level is going to be hard. I've never heard of that. You usually hear coaches, oh, yes, we have the portal and NIL, but it's going to take time. It's going to be a process. We want to build our culture. Rick Pitino was just like, no, I expect to win right away, and I think it's going to be easy. So that was the interesting part, number one. But then the interesting part, number two, which really ultimately isn't that interesting, but he repeated 2, 3, 4 times. We need to get good players in here. I'm nothing without good players. And I think he referenced Louis Carnesecca telling him that 30, 40, 50 years ago. So I bring it up because the introductory press conference was fascinating. He referenced how important players were. And then, how about this? We got a very juicy recruiting rumor that popped up almost immediately after the press conference happened. Now, I'm not saying it will happen, but you started to see rumors on the internet that Ian Jackson, the number 2 ranked player, 5-star guard, number 2 ranked player overall in the class of 2024, he is a New York City kid, and you started to see internet rumor. He is currently committed to North Carolina. Could he flip to St. John's? Oh, by the way, a major recruiting analyst didn't really deny it. So let's get into it because this is juicy. Big Rick energy. He's been on the job for 2 hours, and he's already potentially flipping kids. So here's what you need to know about Ian Jackson. We talked a little bit about him when he committed. 2024 guard, really good player, about 6'4", super athletic, super dynamic, plays on both ends of the court, defends his butt off, powerful athlete, powerful dunker, just a really good player. In January at Hoop Hall, kind of in a quick kind of it wasn't a quick decision, but it was a quick announcement. He said, oh, I'm committing tomorrow, ultimately chooses North Carolina over Kentucky. And at the time we talked about it because it was a quick commitment. And I think there was a lot of speculation. Will he reclassify or will he not? Will he actually enroll in college this coming fall 2023, or will he stay in his class of 2024? And as of right now, speculation is still that he is going to stay in 2024. And listen, to be blunt, even though there's rumors that Rick Pitino could ultimately flip him at St. John's, the speculation is that he's going to be in 2024 and he's going to be at North Carolina. But why these, first of all, rumors don't pop up out of nowhere. And I think the reason why this has come to be something that's sort of interesting is for a few reasons. One, since Ian Jackson committed, a few things have changed. First off, even the North Carolina program that he committed to in January, it's not the same one now that it was in January, because in January, they were the reigning national runners-up. It wasn't going great, but everybody in January thought, okay, they'll figure it out. They play in the ACC. There's plenty of wins to be had. They'll get back to the NCAA tournament. Maybe they can make a run. Well, they didn't make the NCAA tournament. They didn't play in the NIT. It was, by any tangible measurement, the most disappointing season for a number one team maybe ever in the history of the sport. And now the season's over and Hubert Davis is trying to regroup. So North Carolina doesn't look nearly as good as it did, 6 months ago. And two, St. John's looks a lot better, right? Like I think this is part of this as well. Ian Jackson committed to North Carolina at a time St. John's shouldn't have even been under consideration. You're not going there to play for a bad coach in Mike Anderson. And I can disagree how St. John's is handling Mike Anderson's contract situation with the fact that you ain't going to play for him if you're a 5-star can't miss kid. You're not going to play in a 5,000 seat Louis Carnesecca arena. I'm sorry, that ain't happening. And so I bring all this up to say a lot has changed since he committed. And where this internet rumor came from and where the speculation came from, it only got heightened when Andrew Slater, a guy that I respect a lot, a great recruiting writer, he was asked about this specific situation. And he gave a very, very, very interesting answer about the possibility of Ian Jackson, decommitting, or if you want to say being stolen. So here's the exact question. Andrew Slater, recruiting writer who lives in New York. He was asked, Andrew, did Rick Pitino really steal Ian Jackson in only one day at St. John's? Here's what Andrew Slater said that I thought was very telling. He said, 1, Ian is free to do what he wants. He actually said, A, Ian is free to do what he wants. B, steal would be a harsh term to use in recruiting. C, if a fan thinks that a coach waits until they get a job to recruit players, they probably enjoy a lot of college basketball commentary. In other words, if you're saying, if you think coaches wait until they get a job to start recruiting, then I got some beachfront property in Kansas that I'm going to sell you. Lawrence, Kansas, next to Bill Self's house. And then D, he says the resumes of the respective head coaches speak for themselves. And so Andrew doesn't come out and say that anyone is, that Ian Jackson has flipped or anything like that. But what he does say is a few things. He says, 1, if you think Rick Pitino started recruiting the second that he left that podium as the St. John's head coach, you're out of your mind. I've told you for 2 weeks he was going to get this job, and I'm sure for at least 2 weeks he's been starting to back channel possibilities for St. John's as St. John's head coach. But then 2, Andrew brings up the relevant point. If it's about picking, the biggest brand or sticking with the school that you committed to, then yeah, go to North Carolina. But if it's about playing for the best coach that's going to put you in the best position to get drafted the highest in the NBA, the resumes speak for themselves. Go play for St. John's for Rick Pitino. So the question becomes now, what's next? Is this actually going to happen? And what I would say is, to kind of be blunt, listen, right now, as of this second, as I record here on the 21st of March, do I think Rick Pitino is going to flip Ian Jackson? I probably don't. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. 1, like I said, a lot has changed for these two programs since Ian Jackson committed. That is the first part. Again, to be clear, do I think it's going to happen? I don't. But 1, things have changed for this program. 2, if he sticks with the 2024 commitment, an awful lot is going to change between now and the spring of 2024 when he's going to head to a college campus. Now, understandably, if he stays committed, he'll probably sign in the fall. But think about what could happen in the next year. Rick Pitino could build a top 15 program at St. John's in 1 year. I mean, with the portal, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Jerome Tang took over a much worse situation as Kansas State in the Sweet 16 right now. So it can absolutely happen. And North Carolina could go sideways, could be even worse next year than they were this year. I'm not saying they will, but they could. So 1, a lot can change between now and a year from now. That's part of it. And 2, I think there's also the possibility, especially the case that he could flip if he doesn't reclassify. And so I bring it all up to say, I don't think as of today, Ian Jackson plans on changing his commitment, but a lot of stuff changes over the course of 6 months, 8 months, a year before you're actually going to enroll. Finally, let me just say this. Whether Rick Pitino flips Ian Jackson or not, a couple things. One, he's going to have a really talented roster. I don't know how much you saw of all the news that came out on Tuesday, but I thought there was a couple of really relevant things to St. John's first roster. First of all, Rick Pitino kind of casually mentioned, I haven't met with most of the players yet, while also saying that Joel Soriano, St. John's best player, is his team captain. It seems to me that he's basically like, this is the guy I'm going to build this team around. Joel Soriano's fantastic, by the way. I think that the insinuation was, I'm going to build this team around this kid. Everybody else is probably going to be booted to the curb. Little Deion Sanders. I'm bringing my own luggage and it's Louis. That was Rick Pitino. I'm bringing my own luggage and it's Louis. So that's one. Two, I did think it was very interesting. Late on Tuesday, Rick Pitino's two best players from Iona entered the transfer portal. William Clayton, averaged 19 points per game as a sophomore, 6'3" guard, really dynamic player. I saw him against UConn. I think he could play at the Big East level. Rick Pitino's best big man, Nelly Jr. Joseph, averaged 9.5 boards a game, 14.5 points per game, enters the transfer portal. I would guess you just had a ton of success with this guy. Did I say Nelly Joseph Jr.? I'm sorry, Joseph Jr. Joseph Kelly. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place today. Forgive me, I've been running around getting ready. William Clayton Jr. and Junior Joseph Kelly. Junior Joseph Kelly, 14 points, 9 boards per game. William Clayton Jr., as I just said, 18.5 points per game, 43% three-point shooter. So one, we know Soriano's coming back. Two, Pitino's two best players have entered the portal. I think it's a little presumptuous to assume they definitively end up at St. John's, but like Rick Pitino, they wouldn't have to go far, play at a higher level, and I think they can play in the Big East. But the last thing I want to say on this Ian Jackson thing, whether Rick Pitino actually flips him or not, that's not really the point, right? The point is that it could happen. The point is that it could happen, and so because of that, that makes hiring Rick Pitino worth it all by itself. Think about it. Like the idea that a five-star kid committed to North Carolina, whether he's from New York or not, like the idea of even mentioning that St. John's could come in and swoop him at the last minute, that's not something we would have talked about a year ago, 6 months ago, 2 weeks ago. And oh, by the way, St. John's could have hired a lot of good basketball coaches that could not have made that move either. There were a lot of really qualified candidates for this job, and I'm not going to name names because I don't want to insult anybody. I don't think they come in on day one and immediately you don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility that a top 5 player nationally wants to go play for the new head coach. So this is the gift of Rick Pitino. This is why I said you had to do it, because ultimately he can do things for your program nobody can. One, he's already said, we're playing in the Garden and we're selling it out. I think next year there's already some conflicting dates, but he said by year 2, I want all our games to be in the Garden. I coached in a 4,000-seat arena. I ain't doing that again. But 2, he's going to get you in the door with players that nobody else could have, and immediately. Not year 2, not year 3 when there's a proof of concept. Rick Pitino's proof of concept is the last 30 years in basketball. So again, Ian Jackson, will he decommit? Will he go to St. John's? Probably not. But the fact that you believe that it could happen, the fact that I believe that it could happen, the fact that Andrew Slater has to comment on it, it means that it's in the realm of possibility, and it means this hire was worth it. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor. Go ahead and subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube channel. Click that little button down on the bottom part of your screen. Also, make sure to download full episodes of the Aaron Torres Podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast.